So this latest clash that happened between Indian and Chinese troops comes 2 years after what we saw in Galwan. It's important to understand where this happened. It's happened in a place called Yangtse, and let's try and sort of locate Yangtse on a map in the eastern sector for you. It's very close to Tawang. It's about 25-30 kilometers northeast of Tawang. Remember, Tawang is the last big command headquarters that we have as far as the eastern side is concerned, the eastern sector is concerned. Remember, both India and China have been building infrastructure, particularly the Chinese side, heavy-duty infrastructure leading all the way up to some villages on the other side of Yangtse. India too has been building a new road in a place called Bamla, east of Bamla, and before this clash point that happened in Yangtse. So there has been massive infrastructure build up by both sides on either side of this clash site called Yangtse. Now the important thing to understand is that this clash, this happened on the intervening night between 8th and 9th of December. This was last week. It happened at 3 a.m. and we're given to understand that about 300 Chinese PLA soldiers, that's not a small number, 300 Chinese PLA soldiers in the dead of the night at 3 in the morning tried to capture the icy heights. Remember, these heights are 15,000 feet, 17,000 feet. The attempt was to try and capture the heights and get area domination around the Yangtze. Now, why this is important is if either side manages to capture these heights, like I said, the plateaus here are 10,000, 12,000 feet, and the peaks, the heights, are at anywhere between 15 to 17,000 feet. If either side manages to capture this, and remember this is disputed site, all along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control that runs all the way from Ladakh in the western sector all the way up to Tawang in the eastern sector, there are about 20 to 25 recognized disputed spots. Yangtse happens to be one of them. If either side captures Yangtse, then what it means is it gives you visibility, the area domination, the height advantage. It gives you visibility for about 25 to 30 kilometers on either side, on the Indian side as well as on the Chinese side. What this means is then in these harsh climatic conditions where snow sometimes can reach about 7-10 inches, in these harsh climatic conditions, there is no need for daily patrolling on the ground because you get clear visibility on either side. You can, from Yangtse, from the heights of Yangtse, you can see all the way up to Tawang. So it is important that that height domination and area domination be established. So what the Chinese soldiers were trying to do on that intervening night between 8th and 9th of December was to capture the heights of Yangtse. Now, this is not the first time that this place, Yangtse, has been a site of dispute between Indian and Chinese troops. This same place, the Chinese troops had tried something similar at a much smaller scale, though, in October of 2021, that was last year. Similarly, they had done so in 2016 as well. Now, that time too was around that October-November period. Why they're doing this now at this point of time is once the snow sets in, the terrain is very difficult, the weather is inclement, you cannot move around these areas very easily. It's very difficult to move large number of troops. Therefore, they were looking for that height advantage. And like I said, Yangtse is already one of the recognized disputed sites along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control. Now, the modus operandi, and this is where it gets interesting. The question that Indian authorities are asking themselves is, was this similar to the modus operandi that we saw in Galwan, and is that now a new normal with the Chinese, or is there something less localized as far as this is concerned? The similar modus operandi, there were no lethal weapons, no guns, no armaments of any nature that were used. It was clubs, machetes, sticks. There were 6 Indian soldiers who were grievously injured. They had to be flown out from Yangtse to the field hospital in Guwahati. We're given to understand from top army sources that there is a higher number of PLA soldiers too who have been injured. Remember, there were about 300 who came. The Indian side immediately called for reinforcements. There were close to 100, 150 Indian soldiers who came within a few minutes of that call, and then they chased the Chinese all the way back to their command post, which is on the other side of this disputed site. So the injuries also mark the kind of weapons that were used, the bruises that we saw, the black eyes, the fractures. So like I said, 6 Indian soldiers are getting treatment at the field hospital in Guwahati. Now, what is important to understand is China has been building, on its side of the Yangtze, it has been building what are called these settler villages. What it essentially does is it takes a large number of these veterans or people who have served in the paramilitary forces in China and settles them in these so-called settler villages. On the other side of Yangtse is a village called Xiaokang, which is being used as a launch pad. That's the fear. There are about 600 such settler villages all the way from eastern Ladakh in the western sector, in the middle sector, in Himachal and in Uttarakhand, and of course eventually in Tawang in the eastern sector. These 600 villages, and this is what Indian Army veterans and people in the forces also believe, that these villages, these settler villages like Xiaokang on the opposite side of Yangtze, are being used in a way by the Chinese PLA troops to try and use them as launch pads for these kind of stealth operations. Remember, salami slicing has been happening in all three sectors. It is a playbook that the Chinese have sort of perfected, particularly in the disputes that we're seeing in the South and East China Seas. Now, Tawang is important not just for military reasons, but also for political reasons. It's one of the most sacred places in Tibetan Buddhism. In fact, the Tibetans believe that the 6th Dalai Lama actually was born in Tawang. The monastery there in Tawang is one of the holiest shrines for Tibetan Buddhists. There is also a belief amongst the Tibetan Buddhists that the successor to the current Dalai Lama, remember, he's of advanced age, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could potentially hail from Tawang. It's a secretive process, it's a meditative process. They go on for a number of days until, of course, they get a sign as to who the Dalai Lama has reincarnated in and as. So potentially, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could come from Tawang. So for political reasons as well, Tawang is absolutely essential, both for India as well as for China. Now, if you go back and check in history, even in 1962, much of the war was actually focused in this belt, in the eastern sector, as it were. The Chinese, in fact, came all the way from their side, from across the Yangtze River. They came down these icy peaks, capturing Bomla, Zumla, and then finally all the way down south to Tawang. They had captured Tawang, they had held area control of Tawang, but eventually, within 10 days, they relinquished it and they went back onto the other side of Yangtze, this disputed site, as it were. So the important thing is that for the Chinese, and remember, particularly in the last 10, 15 years or so, from 2008-9 onwards, every time a senior government official from India would visit Tawang, the Chinese would make a huge hue and cry about it. They refer to Tawang as part of southern Tibet. And like I said, for not just military reasons, but for political reasons as well, the Chinese have never really given up their claim on Tawang. The important question is this. The incident that happened at Yangtze, the trigger factor of these launch pads, because it's not just here at Yangtze where these launch pads are there, it's there all across the line of actual control. And second, the modus operandi. Remember, the 93 and 96 agreements bar Indian and Chinese troops from opening fire. The last big fire happened in Samudrongchu in 1986. But are they bypassing that? Are they diverting from that by using clubs and machetes? And is this now a new modus operandi? These are the larger policy questions, military, tactical questions as well, that the Indian Defence Forces and, of course, the political leadership will have to contend with. But one thing is very, very clear. The Chinese are not going to sit still. In Galwan, it happened 2 years ago. In Yangtze, it's happened just this past week. If this is a new normal, if this is a new pattern, then surely the Indian Defence Forces will be well prepared for it.